there's like it's a different kind of confidence that comes from that. It's not like a fake bravado. It's like a quiet confidence. It's like, this is me.
Sean Tucker is a photographer, filmmaker, author and speaker based in the UK. Over his career to date, he's been fortunate enough to tell visual stories for individuals, NGOs and big multinational corporations across more than 20 countries.
I think people make the mistake of, extroverts are confident, introverts aren't. We're shy. I don't really think that's what introvert or extrovert means.
He's travelled many long hours as a solo filmmaker and photographer to create work with meaningful message.
You just said there, it costs you. What do you mean specifically by that?
In more recent years, he's begun a popular YouTube channel where he seeks to inspire other creatives. And his most recent book, entitled The Meaning in the Making, shares his philosophy for the creative life. I cannot wait to speak to Sean Tucker.
Time to Speak is a space to pause, think and talk about the power of voice and the art of human connection. Through open conversation with leaders and changemakers, we explore how voice, presence and authentic connection shapes who we are, how we lead, and the impact we make in our work and lives. Welcome to Time to Speak. Hi, Sean. Welcome to Time to Speak.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much for joining me. It's so lovely to speak to you all the time. I just like having you in my conversations, to be quite honest. They're always far richer because of it. So you've been away?
I have. Yeah, I've been to South Africa most recently.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How was that?
It was good. It was a bit of work and a bit of catching up with old friends, and I've got a brother who lives in Durban, so it was I made a little film when I was over there, making portraits with some old friends of mine, which I think is a nice way to kind of celebrate people who are close to you. I did a talk in Cape Town that was based on this book that I wrote a few years ago, kind of about the creative life and my kind of philosophy for the creative life. So that was good. It was a nice crowd, actually. It went quite well. And otherwise it was just lots of driving. I think I did 3,000 miles in a week, and just catching up with people I haven't seen for way too long. So it was really good. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah. You travel a lot. Do you like it?
I do. I like some of it. Like I like I love seeing new places. I think it's like the getting there is the part I don't like. Like I'm not a fan of queuing at airports and going to go through security and waiting for planes. But once I'm kind of somewhere, especially if I can hire a car on the other end and I feel like I've got freedom, that part I absolutely love. Yeah, but it's great. I mean, I'd rather be, I'd rather have work that I can sort of travel and see the world and meet new people, and that's always been something that's a big thing for me. I really enjoy it. I just find every new place you go to changes you a bit and opens your mind a bit and stops you being quite so myopic about how the world works. So I love that part of it, my job.
Yeah, I see you as being somebody really like cool and cultured and international, and then you've ended up in this small village in North Yorkshire.
Yeah. What choice though? It was by I mean, I lived in London for a long time before this, for probably 10 years before this, and obviously throughout my life I've lived in lots of different countries. So I lived in lots of Southern African countries, so Botswana, Zimbabwe, Lesotho, Swaziland, South Africa. But yeah, I was born in the UK, and I suppose when everything kind of fell apart in South Africa, job-wise, coming back here was kind of a no-brainer. It felt like coming back to somewhere that I knew, and I mean, London was great to get things rolling again. Having to build a career from scratch, it was really good, because there's so many opportunities and there's a lot of connections you can make down there. But I'm not a big city person. I really don't like kind of the constant noise and crowds, and fighting with people and being stuck in someone's sweaty armpit on the tube is not my thing. So I think from the minute I got there, I was always trying to plan long term. How am I going to get out, and how am I going to build a life outside of the big city? So when it finally came time that I could think about buying a house, I looked around, and I looked at Devon for a bit because my grandparents were down there. I looked in Wales, and then I looked at the North York area, sort of North York Moors area, which is always an area I've loved, and I have a couple of friends up here anyway. It just seemed a no-brainer, and I'm down to London and in big cities regularly, and I love them for being able to go in and enjoy what they have to offer and catch up with people and have that busy life for a week and then disappear home for a month and can sort of recharge and catch up again. It kind of really works for me and my personality type. I like it.
So your personality type is very
Yes.
clearly you're an introvert.
Yeah.
So I guess it's sort of taking yourself away to those quiet places where you can get downtime and recharge before you go out into the world again.
Yeah. So on the Myers-Briggs, I'm an INFJ. And the introvert part of that is the best definition I heard of introvert extrovert is it's not to do with. I think people make the mistake of, extroverts are confident, introverts aren't. We're shy. I don't really think that's what introvert or extrovert means. I think this definition suggested that it's more to do with how you recharge. So extroverts, if they've had a difficult day, they want to go out and hang out with their friends and talk and be in a space and have fun. An introvert, if they've had a bad day, they want to go home and stick on a series they can binge watch and eat some ice cream and just chill out on their own and recharge. Like we've just got different ways that we like to get our energy back. And I think that's a better definition because I think you can have shy extroverts and confident introverts. It's not the external thing is not necessarily what it seems. I mean, I give talks all the time, and I have people come up to me afterwards and say, because part of one of the talks I give is about my personality type and that I am an introvert, and they'll go, well, I've had a few people that sort of been just handshaking sort of interactions afterwards going, you're not really an introvert because look at how you can stand on a stage and do that. Introverts can't do that. I'm like, of course they can. Yeah, introverts can absolutely communicate confidently and stand up and speak in front of rooms full of people. We can do that. It's just that now I need to go back to the hotel room and to be left alone for a day so I can do something else and just get all that energy back. It's just how we deal with recharging afterwards. And that kind of made a lot more sense to me.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same.
Yeah.
People wouldn't believe that about me either. But I'm so content once my work is done to be at home and not speak to anyone. Slightly guilty of avoiding picking up the phone just because I just get to a point where there's no more talking to be had, no more sort of people facing stuff to be done right now. I've just got to go quiet. And I think as an actor, I always felt I could get away with performing because I was playing a character. I could be somebody else, could step on stage, and it was a way of expressing myself and releasing that energy, hiding behind a character. But the minute I was off stage, I was back to being that introvert again. And please don't recognize me, don't know me. I'm quite happy just like trudging along and being hidden. I actually quite like the idea of being hidden. Quite like that. I'm sure you do too. And it's strange because no one would ever think that about me.
Yeah, exactly. They're probably quite surprised because you come across very confident, or you can stand and speak or teach or whatever you need to do, or step in front of a camera and sort of switch on. And I think people who don't understand the introvert extrovert thing might go, well, yeah, Audrey's definitely not an introvert. She can't be. Look at what she just did. It's like, no, we can do that too.
Yeah, you can. And I think the most, I want to say heartbreaking, that might seem a little bit too dramatic, but for when clients come to me and they say, oh, I'm an introvert, I don't have any confidence, I'm definitely not a speaker, it's always going to be my block. And I'm thinking to myself, no, it doesn't have to be. If you think like that, then it will be, but it doesn't have to be. And I always talk, have you read the book Susan Cain? Quiet by Susan Cain, sorry. And obviously she's talking an awful lot about introverts, and she talks in there about the loudest voice in the room not always being the smartest, and that great leaders come from introverted personalities because they take the time to sort of sit back and hear what everybody else has to say in the room, process it, and wait for their time to speak and give value. And I see that as such a valuable trait. And I wish more people would see it. I really do.
when anyone says something like that to me, that's kind of like, well, I couldn't do what you do because I'm an introvert and I don't have confidence. I'm like, those are two separate issues. Like
Yeah.
the one half being an introvert, that's not a reason not to do what I do because I'm an introvert too. I don't have confidence. That's something to work on. Like that, but it's a separate thing. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean my lack of confidence is ingrained in my personality and I'm doomed to that forever. That
Yeah.
can be worked on. And often there's things you need to take a look at about yourself or how you see yourself or where you've come from or the messages you've been fed as you've gone along about why you don't have confidence in front of people. But that's kind of I hate to be like the therapy guy, but that's the therapy stuff. That's where you go and talk to somebody and work on why you don't feel you have a right to speak or have a voice is a separate issue from your personality, because your personality doesn't disqualify you from speaking. It's two separate things.
Yeah, yeah. I also think it's about choice, right? Because some people are sitting there saying, I actually choose not to be the one who speaks. I'm happy to let everybody else speak. And that's okay too. It's just knowing that that is okay and that's who you are. Yeah. It's not all about spoken word either, is it? The voice.
Well, I kind of like the fact that I think I consciously did this. I mean, obviously in meetings, it's kind of a different thing, but I mean, I worked for the church for a decade. And I mean, you're in, apart from the fact that you obviously speak from a stage on a Sunday, there's lots of church meetings, as you can imagine, about every sort of different thing. And I learned that there was a power to not being the person who spoke first,
Yes.
to wait. Especially if when you spoke, while you're listening to everyone else talk, you're collecting all the information and you're formulating something that should be said, that's really worth saying, that's taken in everything else that's been said, that's automatically going to be far more informed than everyone else who's just needed to get their voice in. So you've waited and you built that up. And if you do that meeting after meeting after meeting, you don't talk or until you're invited to speak. But you've formulated something really good in that time. You become known as the person who has the valued opinion that we all wait for every time. There's a strength to that too. You don't have to be, kind of getting your elbows in and always being the loudest voice in the room. I think people quickly start to tune that out in a personality because it just becomes loud and brash and seems to be trying to fill the space but not having much to say.
Yeah.
I would rather wait and be the person who you have to wait for what I have to say, but I promise you it's always going to be good. That
Yes.
needs to be a better approach.
Yeah. Something which I think is really cool about you, and I think I'm right in saying this, is that obviously you do a lot of public speaking, but public speaking isn't the thing. It's almost like doing the speaking gig is about sharing your ideas and philosophies and knowledge around a specific area and adding value to that group. It's not necessarily about the speaking. So it's not about being seen and heard in an egotistical way. It's almost like a way for you to get your message across. One of the ways, because I know from my perspective, your voice comes in many different ways. It comes through your work. It comes through the way you treat others. It comes through the way you the way you write and the way you speak. So that's only four, but I know there are many different ways. But it feels like we're always getting your authentic voice. Yeah. So if we just like go back to the first bit I was just saying there about speaking and about I don't feel for you, it's about speaking for speaking's sake, it's about something else, and that really comes through. What do you think about that?
Well, it's very sweet of you to say. I think I've got things I care about, and I've got things that I want to talk about because I think they'll help other people because I know they've helped me. And I've got all these different ways I can talk about them. So like you say, writing the last book I did is trying to put those things down because I know if I can get that book into people's hands, something might click with them on some of these things and it really might help. Making the videos that I do is obviously me writing scripts and speaking to a camera. It's kind of like giving a talk, but it's with no feedback, just in a room looking at a camera. But it's giving that message across as well as I can through filmmaking, right? Or if I stand up and give a talk to a room full of people, all the message underneath is all the same thing. It's all the stuff I care about that I really think will help. And each of those things on top is just the mode that I get
Yeah.
to use or engage depending on where I'm at. But if I didn't really care about the stuff I'm talking about, in any of those formats, you'd feel it straight away. And I mean, we all watch stuff, I think. And I saw this really early on when I was sort of getting into photography as a job. I sort of had this idea of maybe I would start a YouTube channel, for example. And I looked around a lot of what other people were doing, and without trying to sound judgmental, although I know I will, I felt like so many YouTube channels just felt like very thinly veiled attempts to market the people on camera, the person who's putting themselves on camera. Like they wouldn't actually give that much helpful information. It was just about, I want you to know me and I want you to pay me for my services. And we don't subscribe to channels that feel like thinly veiled advertising. We want to subscribe to people who are genuinely putting themselves forward vulnerably. And we really connect with the ones that are most vulnerable, that really put themselves out there. And they talk about things they genuinely care about. They're not trying to hack the algorithm or use clever marketing tactics. They're just talking about something they really care about. So if any audience that I built for myself on the internet, I think only comes from my commitment to just talk about things I actually care about in a way that's as vulnerable as I can make it. And you saying that is very kind. I think those who feel that way about what I do, and not everyone does, by the way. Some people just, I have comments that call me a pretentious twat. Like you can get you get everyone's sort of opinion.
Yeah.
Those who do connect with it, that's the response I get. Is like, I really appreciate the fact that you're open and honest, and that you're talking about something that we can genuinely feel you care about. And you're not trying to market to us, because you're being honest about your failings and your mistakes as well. And that, I think, is a great way to build an audience that connects. But it costs you, because you have to put yourself in it. This isn't a business decision from me. This is a communication decision. I know this is the best way to talk about this thing that I really care about, that will connect. And this is all stuff, I learned from speaking in the church. Like if you don't put yourself in it, if you don't ground what you're trying to communicate in your own life, the chances are people won't connect with it, because it's just going to come across as dry information.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you about the church stuff in a second, but you just said there, it costs you. What do you mean specifically by that?
Well, you have to count the cost. I mean, if you're going to open up your life to the public and say, share who you are, open up in terms of your personality, your weaknesses especially, and the mistakes that you've made, you are going to get people jumping on in comment sections and saying, well, yeah, look, how could he make this mistake, and being judgmental, which is about them and, their own insecurities and the fact that they need to jump on. It's not really to do with you, but obviously you have to count that cost. I've had hundreds of trolls who've decided to hang around on the stuff I post online to say with incredible vitriol how much they hate me and what I'm doing. And because I think when you are vulnerable, it polarizes. Some people will love it more than they ever could because of how much you're putting yourself out there. But people who aren't really willing to give that vulnerability for themselves see it as a threat, and they will attack you. So you have to count that cost. And I mean, comments I can take or leave, honestly, and you can just block people. It's not a problem. But I've had people try find my house before to come over and say, I'm really angry at you. Where do you live? I had a guy threaten to come and beat me up because I made a video about photography. It wasn't even anything controversial, but just you might be dealing with somebody who's maybe mentally unstable or mentally ill themselves, who's something about vulnerability, I think, sparks people in a way that can be quite volatile, because you come across as a threat, and I think you've just got to be aware that, like, I mean, if personally, for me, that's the right reason to do it. Like if you read any of Brené Brown's stuff, vulnerability should cost you. It's about getting in the arena yourself and risking and battling stuff. If it was safe, it wouldn't be vulnerability. But you just have to be aware that, yes, it's not always safe to be vulnerable. You've got to calculate what that might actually mean for you personally or professionally or anything else.
Yeah. It's funny, actually. I deliver a keynote which has come right from my heart, called the Art of Human Connection. And I do think it needs to evolve along with me in time. But essentially the story will always be the same. And I remember doing it at a business event. So I was the keynote speaker, and half the room were coming up to me going, oh, I want to stay in touch with you. But actually the booker said, it's not what I was after. It's not what I was looking for.
Yeah.
And even though I'd sent it on beforehand and said, this is the theme, this is the content, it landed as though I was speaking as a vulnerable, authentic human being, and it just didn't fit that person. So I wouldn't change the speech.
Yeah.
But it stays important to me that I do talk about the art of human connection, because that is where I'm going to find my tribe. And I do talk about that a lot with the speakers that I work with. And I think you and I are quite aligned on that. And I think it's important. I don't want anyone to feel exposed or under attack, but at the same time, I want them to feel like they're being themselves and representing the best version of themselves. So that, because actually it takes more energy to fake it. It takes more energy to try and be somebody else, don't you find?
Oh, it's terrifying. It's terrifying. And like, I can't do that anymore, because I think the minute you do that, someone can ask you a question about something you've said afterwards, but you don't have the answer because you were just saying what you think you should say, rather than having all the answers yourself because you genuinely believe it through and through.
Yeah.
I can't play that game anymore. It's like, what's that there's some kind of quote that says something like, if you tell the truth, you never have to remember anything.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to have a memory, because if you just tell the truth all the time, you always have the answers to anything. You know why you think what you think. But if you're playing a part trying to be somebody else, you have to remember all the convoluted things that you're supposed to be and think.
Yeah.
And when someone asks you, it'll just put you into a panic, because I can't remember, or I can't remember the whole thing I've constructed.
Yeah.
But if you drop it all and just go, well, whether you like me or not, this is who I am, and this is what I have to offer. There's like it's a different kind of confidence that comes from that. It's not like a fake bravado. It's like a quiet confidence. It's like, this is me. It's okay if you don't like me, if you don't get me on for other people. It's okay if you don't like that talk I gave. I'll go give it somewhere else, because it really is valuable to some people. But this is what I have to give. It's a different thing.
So let's go back then to your journey to finding your voice as a speaker, and right back to the church, because I know you were taken through a training process to be in service of the church at the time. So tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I should say first, like, I was terrified of speaking in public. Like, it was, there was no more terrifying day for me at school than English orals. You know, you'd have to stand up at the front and give like some mumbled 10-minute speech on a volcano you read about in an encyclopedia, just something so that you could, you know, get a mark. And I just realized I don't have the look at me gene. You know, some people have got this, they can stand up there and they can just, I remember some of my classmates giving these speeches and going like, they're actually they're not just not scared of this, they love the attention.
Yeah.
And that was just the opposite to me. And I was like, I hated it. But then coming out of high school, I decided I wanted to go work for the church. And obviously a big part of working for the church is standing up and speaking to rooms full of people. And so I had this kind of, when I went off to seminary to study, I just had this kind of crisis moment where it was like, well, how am I gonna do this? How am I gonna approach this? I've done a little bit, but I wasn't good at it, and I was visibly terrified every time I did it. But they had homiletics classes or preaching classes at seminary, which was basically, the format is if it was my turn to speak during that week, I would have to go into class and give a 45-minute message speech for the first half, and then we would break and go for a 5-10 minute break, and then come back, and then for the second 45 minutes, the rest of your class and the lecturer got to discuss what you just did. And you're not allowed at that point, you could just listen. You weren't allowed to jump in or justify or explain. You just had to listen to how a room full of people took what you just said. And they pulled no punches. So it was, you know, you hold your hands weird, or that story you told, I don't really buy it, or you mumble these words a lot, or the structure of this thing doesn't make sense. Like, they properly tear it down. And I remember after that first preaching class, I went back to my flat, and I just sat on the bed and I just burst into tears. I'm like, I've made a huge mistake. there's no way I can do this. I can't do this as a job. I can't be a pastor and say, yeah, but I'm one of those pastors who doesn't speak in public. Like they don't. You have to do it. And I kind of had to do this sort of negotiating with myself because I genuinely believed I could do a lot of good if I did that job. And this was just had to be one of those things that I needed to get over, or I wasn't going to make it. And so I just put my head down and said, no matter how uncomfortable this is, I'm going to keep doing this, and I'm going to see how good I can get at it. And after I kind of made that decision, I started to get pretty good. Like I'd worked out how to tell a story, and I went and watched lots of other people speak as well deliberately. I listened to speeches on podcasts, and like there were these cassette tapes being passed around at the time of different speakers around the world, and I was listening to how they did it and started to reverse engineer it. And I started to get pretty good at that kind of standing up and talking and speaking in public. And it was probably so that would have been my first year at seminary. So we're talking 2001 maybe. By about 2003, my third year, I was getting really good, and I was being asked to, I worked for a church at the time, but I didn't see them very much because I was being asked to go and speak at all the other churches in the province because they wanted to sort of ship me out, and sort of I got to be this little, I suppose, like, it's a bit sad, but this kind of ecclesiastical rock star getting passed around at gigs, and I kind of did these talks, and I remember we were still doing those preaching classes. And during my third year, I had it was my turn that week, and I'd prepared this 45-minute thing. And by that point, I didn't get many criticisms from the rest of the class when I did it, because I was kind of known as one of the better ones in the class. So I just got lots of compliments, and that's really great. And if it was the odd criticism, I had an uncalibrated ego at that stage. So I was just kind of like explaining away their criticisms. And going, oh, they don't really understand. I'm better than them anyway. And I came in and I gave this message, 45 minutes, and I knew it was good. Like I knew the structure was good and it worked. And we went for that break. We came back, and the class did. They were very complimentary. This was great. That's brilliant. He does this really well. Blah 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 blah. But my lecturer, who I really respected, this guy, like he was who I wanted to be when I was big. He's that guy. He was that guy. Just like a really gentle, thoughtful, deep, intelligent but caring older guy. And he waited. He didn't say a word the whole class, and I was like quite confused. Like, why is he not getting involved in the conversation, or kind of steering? Like he usually steered the feedback. And he waited until almost the very end, and he just said, "I'm going to stop everybody." And he just looked at me and he said, "Sean, if I'm going to be really honest with you, you insulted me today." And then he stood up and he walked out the class. We're like, oh my gosh, what did I? What? And everyone was quite. I was confused, although I think I had an inkling about what he was going to say, but the rest of the class were confused, and I was like shocked by it because he just wasn't an unkind person. That was very uncharacteristic. And then the next day he called me to his office, and he sat me down and he said, I'm sorry if that came across as like rough on you, but I'm not sorry about what I said. And the reason I said it is because I really believe you do have a gift you can give other people, but you are squandering it right now because you're showing off. You're trying to be these other speakers you've listened to, and you're faking it. You're trying to put on a voice as if you're them. You're telling stories that are designed to show off rather than actually make a point. I don't really know what you care about anymore. You're just trying to impress the room. And he says, if you do that, you're going to absolutely sell out. What you say will impress people, because people are impressed by that kind of stuff. But you will make no difference in anyone's life if that's how you treat it. And I was so ashamed and kind of embarrassed. And I'd already started to admit some of this stuff to myself before he said it, but this was just kind of the nail in the coffin. It's like, I'm on completely the wrong track. I've learned enough to impress the room, but I'm losing the core of the reason why I'm doing this. And so I started to strip everything back and make it a lot simpler. And I had to kind of build back credibility with audiences and with myself. And then I kind of switched gears into a totally different way of speaking, where I started to put myself on the line more. It wasn't about making you think that I was this super intelligent, erudite guy, but it was more about like, we all struggle with life and it's really difficult. I'm in the same boat as you, and I often get it wrong, and here we are. And using it to actually bring comfort instead of make people feel less than me somehow, trying to pull that trick of just because I'm on a stage, I'm somehow better than you. it just totally changed my trajectory. And as difficult as it was at the time, I'm eternally grateful to him for that.
Yeah. You've said so much in there.
So,
It's a brilliant story, and I can just imagine what you must have gone through when he said that to you. And it's not really the feedback itself, it's the realization, like knowing it within your own self. Yeah, I think I was doing that. And that actually hits home and hits harder than somebody else saying it in a way. And it's a gift, what he said to you. It's a real gift. In the early stages of my business, and I was going out to speak, I remember I asked you for some feedback on something that I was speaking on at a speaking event. And you gave me the feedback, yeah, it's good, but it feels like you're trying to be something you're not. And the difference might be that I wasn't trying to show off. The difference definitely is that coming from being an actor who learnt the lines and fully got themselves involved in character, and ironically has always been, and I will always be, in search of authenticity and vulnerability within the character, really struggled to be that as myself. And so when I was trying to represent myself and my business, I was literally ticking boxes. I was literally like, if I do it this way, if I say this thing, then they will like me, I will be accepted, I will be seen as somebody who is good at this. And actually the feedback you gave me was really useful at the time, because I realized I don't need to do that. I don't need to fit into any pigeonhole. I don't need to tick any boxes. Of course, you've got, as you will have had with your training, you're taught skills and discipline which arm you with the tools you need to be able to deliver eloquently and with impact. But what you don't do with those tools is turn them into a tick box exercise, which means everybody goes, yes, they did it right. Because you're right, nobody is changed by that.
No.
Nobody is changed by that. What I think it's a massive gift that he gave you. It must have been horrible, but I do think
No, it's the best. It was he rescued me genuinely, and it's right what you say. Like, it's because we all have techniques that we use, and there's nothing wrong with techniques. But and I have techniques I still use today. In fact, the way I make videos on my YouTube channel is the same way I prepared a sermon. Like, I'm using the same structure and everything. Techniques are fine, but you can't stop at the technique. You have to give the technique your flavor. It has to feel like you. And the techniques, I feel, should be invisible, because if I can see the moves you're making, the trick is gone. Like, it's done. It's like seeing a magician. I can see how the trick's done. I don't want to see. I just want you to take me on a journey. The trick should be invisible, and I think the best way to do that is to just take, like, the principles of good storytelling, for example, or how to structure something, or how to land a point in a way that has that impact in the moment. That stuff should be fed through my personality and how I normally speak. The way I'm talking to you now should not feel different to the way when I speak on a stage, and it should not really feel that different from how I sit over a coffee with you at a coffee shop. Because if I suddenly put on speaker voice, I think I lose the trust of the room, especially for anyone who knows me, right? Because why is he doing the voice? You know, what's he trying to hide? What's he trying to say? It's like I've gone into marketing mode, in which case we don't trust marketing mode, right? I want a human being to talk to me as themselves. So the way I speak should always be the way I speak, but the techniques can just help me polish and hone and point that message at something more deliberately. But they should be, it should have my flavor.
I think we need to get our hands on some politicians. Give them a helping hand.
The worst. I mean, they use the same phrases. It's always like, I mean, the flavor of the month at the moment for all of them seems to be this, like, I've been perfectly clear. It's always, I've been perfectly clear. I just want to be very clear. It's like, but you're not being, because you all use that phrase, which means we know you sat in a room with a speaking consultant who's told you, hey, say, I want to be clear, because then they'll think you're being clear. Like, no, I want to hear you. And I want you to hear you be honest with me. And I can tell when you're being honest with me and when you're not answering the question. I think like, I don't know, politics just seems to be where people, where like good communication goes to die, because they suddenly get so constrained that they can't be honest because they're having to cover for all the
Yeah.
stuff behind the scenes and the things they can't tell us. And it's a nightmare.
Yeah, having said that, it's quite useful for me because I use them quite a lot
Yeah.
as examples of bad speaking in my workshops and
Yeah.
masterclasses. So
Yeah.
I've got loads of content to work with there.
And there are good ones, don't get me
Yeah,
wrong. There are ones who do
yeah,
give speeches, especially in different contexts, you find, not necessarily in Parliament, who actually you can tell they are actually very good at what they do. But when they get in that world, they somehow lose it. And then especially if you go back, it seems we were better at speaking, especially politicians were better at speaking, giving speeches earlier. And now we've kind of turned it into this kind of rote sort of pseudo modern kind of corporate speak that I just don't think feels human enough, and that erodes people's trust in politics. They
yeah,
don't believe what you're saying anymore.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think that's why we have that crisis. An area actually which my clients struggle with a lot is preparation. And we're talking about this saying, you've got to show up as yourself, you've got to do yourself.
Yeah.
And it is really hard to help somebody understand how you show up as yourself and speak eloquently as yourself, but you do an awful lot of preparation. You work
Yeah.
really hard to hone your speech and your craft in order to show up as yourself.
Yeah.
How do you feel then about that and about preparation?
I mean, preparation for me is everything. Like just because I say like I want to speak as myself from the heart doesn't mean I just jump on a stage, pick up a microphone, and start talking, because I will waffle, and I don't know anyone who won't waffle, and that to me is disrespecting my audience's time. Why they
Yeah.
have to sit and hear me waffle and try work out what I'm saying. Like, so for me, preparation is respecting my audience. So when I was working for the church, I would write the entire message I'm giving out longhand. I would type it out, like word for word, everything goes down on the page. And that's not to use the wording when I'm standing on the stage, because I don't have that anywhere near me when I'm actually speaking. But I write the whole thing down to make sure that I'm being as economical with words as possible, that there's the right kind of flow, ebb and flow through it, that it's got the highs and the lows where it needs to be, and that they're well spaced, that the stories are well told, that the points are well made, and that the structure overall works well. It's just to test all that out for myself. And that's where I can edit and take out paragraphs. I don't need to mention that. That's superfluous, and I can sort of tighten it up. Then all I went on stage with was a scrap of paper, just a tiny scrap of paper with one word or a sentence for each of those things. So I'd have a word or a sentence for like the introduction. I would have 3 points usually. Each one would have like a little sentence or a word with maybe a couple of points under each, but they're just word or sentence to jog my memory, and then where I would land it at the end, how I'd land the plane. And it was like having that, it to me is a perfect balance between I've done my homework. I'm not bringing my homework on stage with me and reading it, but it's more easily accessible. And those are just like prompts to remind me what I wrote about. Then I've got this balance between you can watch me on stage thinking about what I'm going to say, because which feels authentic, right? It feels conversational if I do that, but it's not thinking from scratch. It's just remembering what I wrote before. So I'm well prepared, but I'm still thinking of the wording as I go, and I can trust myself to do that. And that for me is a good balance between not reading and over preparing on the one hand, and also not just jumping on stage and not preparing and waffling my way through. It's the best of both worlds. So I find that, and I do exactly the same now with videos. Like I script out every video that I put onto my YouTube channel, like word for word. I don't use that script. I have it, and I'll sort of look at a section and I'll throw it away, and then I'll just say it to camera a few times until I like one of them, and that's the one that I'll use. And it doesn't matter that the wording changed. The wording should change, because then it feels authentic, right? Because I'm thinking about it and it's authentically coming out of me, but the homework was done about the points I wanted to make. So that's the balance I like to strike.
Yeah, I mean, you clearly don't need any help from me, but you would be like my A-star student. It's like you're speaking my 8-point preparation process back to me
Nice, good,
in
yeah,
terms
good.
of draft,
It
edit.
works, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Where you use the term ebb and flow, I use light and shade, and I use the word waffle as well, which always makes me chuckle now, because I'll say whenever I'm teaching, we're going to be economical with the words, we're going to gain clarity, we're going to cut out the waffle. And whenever I go and deliver over in Paris, they always say to me, "What is the waffle?"
Yeah.
Oh yeah, sorry. So it's a language thing. So then
Take
I've
you
got
down to the local cafe.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I will say on the other side, I have a balance with that though, because I think I have a slightly different context to you as well. I'm very economical for video stuff, but when I speak, I mean, the talks I give are always around an hour, so they're long, and I think there I allow myself some kind of playfulness with it as well. And if I want to kind of I try not to make it too neat because it feels too prepared then. So I did this talk. I've been doing this talk for the last 4 years or so since The Meaning in the Making, this book that I wrote came out. And I went over to the States last year and did the talk in San Francisco a couple of times, which is where the publisher is. And the publishers came to both those talks. And the first night I gave it, they were like, "Oh, that's great. You're just so natural and easy, and it just seems to really flow, and it's really smooth and everything." And then they came back the next night, and then they went, "Oh wow, every word of that is planned, but it doesn't. I didn't know that. It didn't come across like that." And I think there's a way that you can hide that level of preparation in the way that you deliver it that can feel a lot more conversational and almost like playful, but also stumbly, and you making slight mistakes, but it's not mistakes. You know what you're doing. I mean, stand-up comedians are brilliant at this. If you watch how they do stuff, if you ever go watch a stand-up comedian set and then you watch them the next night, it's almost word for word the same, but it seems like they're thinking about it as they go, and there's an authenticity to that you can't fake. So the economical side, I think, is good, but you can also have a way that you deliver that feels thoughtful, playful, but also a little, messy, rough around the edges.
You're talking about something that I know about. So it's like I live and breathe it every single day. So even though the words are the same in a performance, it's going to be different every night. And you have to find a way for it to be different every night.
Yeah.
It also makes me laugh that you said stand-up, because I actually did a module in stand-up comedy, which was the hardest thing I've ever done. I did that at university. It was hilarious. I remember my lecturer saying to me, "You're never going to be a comedian. You can be the straight man, but that's probably it." I mean, I got laughs on the night, but I know exactly what he means. I think somewhere along the line, I'm taking myself far too seriously. So that's out. But in acting, we always say you have to know the words so you no longer know them.
Yes.
And the reason why we say that is because every night, the way we mix it up, even if the words are exactly the same, is we open up our senses to feeling the energy of the audience, engaging with the atmosphere in the room, and sharing that atmosphere with the people that you're performing to or speaking with, and allowing that energy to afford you space and time between those words or paragraphs or phrases where you can riff and make it fresh and move around. So even when you're an actor and you've got to stick to script, certainly not the same when you're public speaking, you can go off course and come back. But even when the words have to be identical every night, it should feel different every night. It's absolutely the right way to honor your audience. But again, you can't do that without preparation. You certainly don't have the confidence within your own capabilities to go, "It's okay because that person over there might heckle, or that person might say something to me right now, or an accident could happen on stage," whatever could happen. I know it so well that I can save myself, and it's become part of me now, that it's no longer scripted, it's in my bones, and then you give it that new energy every night. So again, you're speaking about something that I feel deeply passionate about. And I think it's really difficult if you're not a performer or a speaker to understand that and to know what it feels like and how valuable that is when you find it. So
And
thank you for opening
that
that up.
preparation, right? I mean, we, like, especially from acting, like it's like it's not just knowing the speech. It's not that. It's like a through and through knowing it and having run it a bunch of times and seeing the reactions to know what to change in the moment, what not for different audiences. Like, I think this speech I'm mentioning now, I've probably done it 40, 50 times in the last 4 years. But in the first 10 times, I was quite straight with it, you know? I didn't mess with it too much, but the more it went on, it so inhabited me that like, if you just turn lights and threw me on the stage now, I could give it now without thinking about it because it's in me. And I have the freedom to play, but only because of the amount of prep and the amount of practice I've had around it. Then you can reach that kind of level of being a bit more playful with it.
Yeah. I mean, there is a difference between the likes of us where we're speaking communication, being in a space for others is actually what we do. It's part of us. And there's a difference between that and being a professional, a leader, somebody who has a 9 to 5 job, probably more than that these days. It's more like 60 hours a week instead of 40. And for them, it's how am I ever going to find the time to do that level of preparation? And for me, it's always that pushback of prioritizing time, because actually how you show up is the number one thing. People will always, if you're in sales, people will always buy from the person first. If you're a leader, a team will always follow an authentic leader first. But it's very difficult to help shift the mindset towards that it's actually why I've created Time to Speak, the podcast, because I wanted to say, if we take time to speak, we can uncover so much. And time is so important when it comes to figuring out what we're going to say and how we're going to say it. So what would you say to somebody then who's a leader who's really busy? This goes for politicians as well, extremely busy under so much pressure.
Yeah.
Who don't necessarily have the level of time or would not prioritize the time in the same way as we would.
Part of it, I think, in that context comes down to knowing your subject well, like knowing that through and through. And I think that's something that you should have anyway. And if you're somebody who is being asked to speak as an expert on a subject, whatever that subject is, I think knowing your subject, like in your bones, that is something that you can spend time doing anyway because it will benefit your job. So start there, do the thing you can do. And then when it comes to actually speaking, I think it's a case of keeping it simple then, like building what you say around this wealth of knowledge you have on this particular subject. And all you're doing in that case, you're not doing all this research and preparation to understand the subject, because hopefully you understand that. Now the research you're doing is, how do I, and I've heard this is a good definition of intelligence, how do I take complicated ideas and present them to somebody else where it's simple and understandable? Like that's huge. And that's something that does take time. And some people find that easier than others, right? Some people are incredibly intelligent about a subject. They know a lot about a subject, but they really don't know how to translate it to people that they need to get that across to. And that's where the work needs to happen. So, and it would be down to, how do I take, I always think back to like when I worked for the church for this kind of thing, because, you know, a lot of my job back then was teenagers and young adults. So sort of 13-year-olds to 25-year-olds. And I had to like talk to them about the mysteries of the universe when Facebook had just come out on their phones, and they're sitting there like, how am I going to hold their attention about something that's so nebulous and random? I've got to ground this for them in a way that keeps their attention. And I learned that that's where story comes in. So if you know a subject deeply, take time to write a story about where what you know means something to you or to somebody you know, and make it human. And then the work you're going to be doing is not all the like, you know, preparing the knowledge of the speech, because you've got that. It's preparing the story and getting that in your head and learning how to deliver that in a way that connects with an audience, so they care about the thing you care about. Right? That's where the work comes in. But I don't think there is a way around finding the time to prepare. Like it's you can't. There's no, I wouldn't say to somebody who goes, well, I just don't have time to prepare a speech. And I'd be like, well, don't speak then, because you will do a terrible job, because you can't just stand up on a stage and go. Like, I can't do that. And I've been doing this for decades. Like, I can't do that. I have to find the time to put it together. Right. So if it's a 10-minute talk somewhere, just work on the story that gets the information out, and trust yourself to talk about the information, but write that story out well and practice it. Right. ground it in a narrative. Or if it's an hour-long thing, yeah, there's no way around it. If you're giving a keynote at a conference and it's an hour long, I think for what they're paying you, they expect you to definitely put in the time. There's no way around it. You have to prepare. You have to
Yes, you
write
do.
that thing out, test the ideas, test the stories, test the structure with friends or colleagues who can actually give you some honest feedback.
Absolutely, absolutely. And always to be thinking about the actual truth, which is when you speak, you're not speaking for yourself, you're speaking for your audience.
Yeah.
And if you're not doing that, then don't speak.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. And it goes back to giving value as well, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Not just hot air.
And we've all sat in audiences, right, where we can feel that the speaker on stage is there for their own aggrandizement. And we've sat in audiences where we heard speakers and we're like, oh, they really care about what they're saying.
Yeah.
And we receive them in a totally different way.
Yeah.
Totally different way. You've got to make sure that you're coming across the way you intend, that you genuinely care about what you're talking about for their sake, not yours.
Yeah. And I actually feel like I need to, I need to say, of course, all the preparation, all the skills, of course, that's really important when you want to land a message. But if you're being really authentic and true to yourself, it's likely that the audience will love your speech better, even if you make a load of mistakes, because they're connecting to a real human being. So I would always say that first.
Yeah.
You know, deal with the person first. Like, who are you? What do you want to say? What's your story? What will that give the audience? How will they leave feeling changed? Really cool stuff there. I'm thinking about how you speak to people through your images and your videography.
Yeah, I mean, it all comes from the same place. It should do. You know, if it's, I wrote about this in The Meaning in the Making, that I think all creative output should come out of who we are. You know, so in different ways, the different creative outlets I have communicate the things that I care about, or my experience of the world, or something that I think matters. I mean, the writing and the speaking is obvious. The content's in it. The videos are quite obvious. I suppose, like an example I could give you for photography is with street photography. I began, especially when I was down in London, going around and just photographing on the streets. And I realized that I kept, very intuitively at the start, I didn't really know what I wanted to take photographs of. But as I photographed, the same themes kept coming back at me. This idea of single figures kind of walking alone on streets in urban spaces, and interesting light and shadow, sort of deep shadows and light sort of pools around them. And if you'd asked me back then why I was doing that, I probably would have just said, well, aesthetically, it's kind of cool. But the more I went along, I thought there might be something more to this. And then there was probably about a 3-month patch where, for some reason on my Instagram, it kept coming up. People kept commenting under this, saying, oh, this reminds me of Edward Hopper, or Edward Hopper's name kept getting dropped under these images. And I thought, I didn't even know who he was. So I had to go and do some research, like, who's this person? And I found out he's this incredible painter. He worked in oils and painted sort of urban scenes in the Americas in sort of 1920s to 1950s, especially sort of 50s in New York. And when you look at his paintings, a lot of the time he's capturing people alone in urban spaces in interesting light and shadow. And there's like a loneliness to these images. And, you know, that's not what New York looked like in the 50s. It was post-war boom time with crowds and, you know, all this frenetic energy. So painting single figures sitting alone in these spaces was obviously a choice. And when I looked at those paintings, I felt like he's not painting what cities look like. He's painting what these cities often feel like to us. That even when we're surrounded by people, we can feel quite alone or isolated. And then when I went back and looked at my images of street photography, why am I like photographing these single figures walking alone in urban spaces? I realized, like, again, it comes back to personality. Like, who am I? I'm an introvert. So when I'm in London, I would never walk down Oxford Street. It was a nightmare. You know, it's just crowds of shoppers and people. I would always be a few streets over on a quieter street, because I would prefer it out of the noise, and that's how I like to experience a city. You would never catch me, you know, in the pub with the crowd of people yelling at a football match. I'm reading a book at a quiet cafe. That's just my personality. And then when I looked at the images, I realized more than just the aesthetics of it, which I like. It's quite graphical. I'm, in a sense, I'm definitely photographing my experience of how I move in a city on my own through these back streets. and in a sense, maybe I'm photographing myself, right? So again, when I kind of went beyond the aesthetics of it, I realized what is in me is coming out intuitively, like, and then I'm presenting my view of the world and my experience of cities, and then other introverts are going, hey, me too. And then suddenly we've got that kind of safety in numbers. I'm not a weirdo on my own. There's a bunch of us, and this is just another part of the human experience. So
Yeah.
it's like going in and working out, who we are. That's where the good stuff comes out. I mean, the portrait photography is slightly different. Again, like the first degree I did was in psychology before I went off to seminary. And so a lot of the portrait sessions I do end up being half therapy sessions, to be honest, because it helps people come to terms with who they are and how they're changing and how they look on camera, and actually liking themselves and maybe loving themselves again. Like that's something I'm passionate about. And so being aware of the fact that that's something that interests me, that I have a little bit of training in and that I have an interest in, means I can use my camera for more than just, I'll give you a shot of yourself. It might make you like yourself more by the end of it, and help you to realize how you've changed, and that everyone else in your world loves you the way you are and how you look, and you're the one who's obsessing about the things that you don't like, that angle of you, or you don't like that thing about you. Like, it's another way that I can kind of take something that's in me and put it out. It just happens to be through a camera. So yeah, it all comes from the same stuff, really, the same place.
Yeah, I mean, it's so difficult. I'm thinking of myself as a subject here because you've taken my picture, my photo, and I've had my photograph taken loads of times over my career and not always, in fact, not very often enjoyed it. It's really difficult in this day and age not to be critical of yourself. And because there are so many images out there where people look beautiful, you can feel really vulnerable putting yourself out there. Even sitting in front of a photographer and having them take your picture can be quite scary. I think by the time I'd got to the point of working with you and you took my photograph, I was really ready for you to just go, I'm just going to take these photographs and I'm just going to take them how I want to take them. And I know that you said, send me some ideas of what you quite like, but I knew that you weren't going to actually bend that far from your style because one, I wouldn't want you to, but two, because you are who you are as an artist and as a photographer. And I think as a subject, we've got to buy into that. The thing that I actually enjoyed the most about having the photographs done was I'm older and like linier and wrinklier and my hair isn't perfect and all of those things. And the photos weren't about that. They were about the stories. Like, what was I saying when you took the picture, or what was the photograph saying? And so in a way the image felt bigger than me, so it was definitely me there, but you're not just looking at a person to see if they're beautiful or not. You're looking at an image and reading thousands of stories. You're reading all of the things that have gone on with them throughout their life. Luckily for me, I'm middle-aged, I've got a history, so there's a lot of stories, but I don't know if I'm being very eloquent with this. It's like you go deeper than the surface of a person and look to find something, again, which is very real and has a narrative. Would you agree with that, or am I?
Yeah. I mean, I used to go, one of my favorite things to do in London used to be to go sit in the National Gallery in room 22, because that's where the Rembrandts are. And if you look at a Rembrandt painting, I often think about him, like, because he died in poverty and obscurity. We don't even know where his grave is, but this is like one of them, for my money, one of the most talented portrait painters of all time. But when you look at his portraits, they're bad marketing. Like, they're not trying to make people look young and beautiful. In fact, he's often accentuating age and wrinkles and lines, and he's got so much rich character in his portraits. And I find them so compelling for that reason. If they were glossy, I think they would have been forgotten long ago. There were loads of painters in that era who you would commission to do your portrait just because you want it to stand on the mantelpiece and show off to future generations of your family. We've forgotten about all those painters, but this guy who seemed to put so much grit and earthiness in these portraits, this stuff is remembered and now it's in galleries. And that's always made an impression on me that I don't want to make portraits of, I don't want to make glossy portraits of models. I'm not interested at all. It just leaves me personally. I don't mind doing the work if it's for a client, but it leaves me personally cold, and that stuff is very rarely going on my website. I much prefer a rich, characterful portrait of a properly open human being, because when any of us see that, right, we find that incredibly compelling and comforting, because we're all aging and changing. And like, if we see someone doing that gracefully, right, we're like, oh my gosh, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. I just need to do it gracefully too. We'll be fine, because that person is stunning. Like, I'm hideous, of course. Like, we always think that. I'm hideous, but everyone else. But like, look how beautiful they are. And that person, of course, is going, oh my gosh, yes, but this photograph, I see this about myself. And they're doing the same thing we do, right? But we see it and we go like, that's a fully rich, rounded, beautiful human being. And I always want to capture that character more than any kind of glossy facsimile of yourself for marketing purposes. That really doesn't interest me. So yeah, that's exactly kind of how I approach it.
It's just what is hilarious is that the thumbnail for this podcast is a photo you took of me. And you made me look amazing. So
well,
I guess.
But it is your face. Like, I didn't do anything. Like,
No,
I mean, I'm fairly light on the retouching with stuff as well, because for those reasons I said, it is you. So if you look amazing, it's because it's how you look. Like, and this is what I mean. Like, you see, you already go like, not sure about that. It is though, because it is you. It's just you in lighting that's a little bit dramatic and stylized, but that is who you are. In which case, you have to admit that maybe you don't mind yourself as much as you thought, beyond all the flaws that you can see that no one else cares about, that we all have, right?
Yeah.
That's why I think the power of portrait photography is teaching you to see what other people love about you. And if you can see and accept it, and that's hard. Like, a lot of people can sort of see it, but they resist it and go like, no, but they're wrong. And I actually do see these problems with myself. We stick to the flaws, but if we can let them go and see it for what it is and how other people take it in, it makes us accept ourselves totally differently.
Yeah. I do want to ask you something else. I know I've kept you for a long time, but I want to ask you, because you've mentioned Meaning in the Making, which I've listened to, and it's beautiful. But I know you've written another book, and I actually think it's your third one. I don't know what the second one was.
Well, The Meaning in the Making was the second one.
Oh, that was the second. So what was the first?
It's a book I self-published back in South Africa when I left the church, and it was about leaving the church and the reasons why, and that whole story. Yeah.
Oh, the reasons why. That's a whole other podcast.
Yeah, you probably won't be able to find it, thank goodness. But yeah, it's out there somewhere.
So what's this next one about?
It's on street photography. So I've written it with a friend of mine who's a very talented street photographer down in London. We've done it together, and it's trying to get photographers to think about street photography as less reportage. I think the traditional approach has been to just sort of, like a newspaper reporter, just go out and capture things that happened on the street. And it's trying to get you to make images on the street which are more artistic, in that you abstract things in the frame, or you hide things in shadow, or you shoot through things, or use color in creative ways so that they have a more kind of painterly quality. So it's basically a whole book full of ideas about how to approach that, different subjects to try, different approaches to take, different things to focus on, like for example, photographing like a historian, right? So a lot of people go out today and they'll take an image on the street, but they'll take it because they want to post it onto Instagram immediately and get lots of likes and attention for it. But that makes us photograph very particular things. So one of the common things I hear from street photographers is, I'm so sick of photographing people and everyone's just got their face in their phone. And I say, yeah, that's true now. That is the way the world looks, but you're missing a trick, because if you don't take those photographs, or take the best photograph you can of someone's face in their phone, there's going to come a day where phones don't exist, right? And street photographers in the 1950s were complaining that everyone had trilby hats on with their head in a newspaper, but we would kill for that shot now because it's cool,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So it's thinking with this longer term vision of don't take for granted and don't have that blinker on of all the common sort of stuff that we see around us. Like, well, I'm just used to all these things, so I'm not really paying attention and I'm just looking for the unusual. Start to think in the longer term, like what's unusual to history's hindsight? And what are you missing now that you could be making images on that everyone's not bothering with because it's so ubiquitous? But you could make the image of that 50 years down the road, people are going, see how people, they held these strange little light rectangles, these phones in their hand that lit them up at night from the bottom. It looked really odd. Isn't that crazy that that's what they used to use? And, like that's going to look mad one day and it's going to look interesting. So it's things like that, just trying to get you to think beyond the kind of, how to succeed or get famous on Instagram, trying to go a bit deeper and longer and think about how you can make more artistic images on the street. That should be out in June next year. Yeah.
That's really cool. Next year, next June or this year?
June coming. Yeah.
Oh, June coming. Oh, that's good. Not so long to wait then. Not so long to wait at all. So what's next for you?
I don't know, actually. I'm kind of in an in-between space at the moment. Like I'm thinking about what next. I've just finished this book up now, so it's off to the printers. I'm off to Morocco in a couple of weeks. We're sort of, I used to do these creative retreats every year in Italy, and we're thinking of shifting over to Morocco. So we're going to go research that, my little team and I. Yeah, I've got some more talks and stuff coming up, keep the channel going. But honestly, that kind of stuff, the YouTube channel it's going okay, but it's definitely on a downward trajectory now. I think a lot of these channels are. Social media doesn't have the traction it used to have. So I'm looking to kind of diversify things and spread things out. So I've got some ideas about ways that I could dig back in on the photography side as a business. And that's all kind of something I'm trying to work through at the moment. So I really feel like I'm in this kind of liminal space between something that was working well and whatever's going to work well next. And at the moment, I'm in that kind of adjustment and tweaking stage because the world, and especially the world online, is changing a lot and changing fast. So.
I guess, I mean, when you were talking, I was thinking about how it sounds to me like you like to turn what you're doing into a study case. So you go deep and you explore it deeply. And it just feels to me like at some point you're going to decide where you're going to put your energy next, and you're going to explore that deeply, and that's going to become your thing. And that's actually really exciting and beautiful, just to think that when the time is right, that's what you will be doing. So I look forward to that. I look forward to hearing about where you're going to go next. Sean Tucker, thank you for taking the time to speak with me today. I've really enjoyed our conversation. I hope you have too.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure.
So it's post discussion with the amazing Sean Tucker, and I'm just sitting here contemplating that discussion. There's so much in there, so much you can learn from Sean. And what I enjoy most about speaking with him is he has such integrity. I'm sure we all doubt ourselves, we all question ourselves, and we've all been on a journey to get where we are in this world today. And I'm sure Sean has done the same, but he's found himself in a place where he knows his craft, he knows his heart, he knows his mind, and that comes through in his conversation and in the work that he does. So I find that conversation was really inspiring for me, and I hope you enjoyed it too. See you in the next episode.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Time to Speak. If you'd like to listen to more, you can find us on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and the podcast page on my website, audreywoodhouse.com. This podcast is brought to you by Audrey Woodhouse Honestly Speaking Limited, and it is an Actors Actuality production. See you soon.